Exodus 12 through 14 picks up the story with the Israelites right after the 10 plagues have ended, and Pharaoh has said to Moses, all right, that's it, y'all get out. Right? Just get out of here, we're done, we're not fighting anymore, God wins. And so the Israelites leave, and then we're going to see that they leave on this like triumphant note, but then very quickly find themselves in another spot where they need God's deliverance, where they need his provision, and where they need to learn to trust him again. And he does. And what we're going to see here is a pattern that you can probably identify in your own life as well. It's very simple. It's a yes, no, yes pattern. Now, you've probably had this experience at some point. Maybe you didn't use these words. You were probably more eloquent because you're smarter than I am, right? But let's just think of it this way. So you have moments in your life that are yes kind of moments. God delivers, God provides, he leads you into the new season, he takes care of the problem, he provides the new opportunity. So let's say that first yes, that's like currently it's kind of wedding season, right? Which is a weird wedding season, but when quarantine canceled all the weddings in the spring, they all got pushed to the fall. So I think Angie and I have done or been at about 6 weddings in about 9 weeks. So it's just everywhere we look, somebody is getting married. And those weddings are wonderful moments, right? They are, yes, look what God has done. We prayed, we longed, we hear the stories from the parents, from the bride, from the groom. They're all wonderful, right? And so there's all kinds of those. That could be when you have a baby. It could be when you get the job. Maybe it's when you got the scholarship, you made the team, whatever it is. We know these yes moments. But then what we don't like, but often experience, is the yes is sometimes followed by a no in the exact area where we have experienced that victory and triumph. All right, so again, let's take marriage as our example. If our first yes is the wedding, the celebration, the no is at some point, hopefully after the honeymoon. Maybe for some of you it was on the honeymoon. Maybe it was at the reception. I don't know, but at some point there's this like, this is awesome, this is wonderful, and then at some point you look and you think, oh no. This is not exact, not that you're questioning why did I marry them, but you're just saying this is not exactly what I signed up for, right? And maybe you, like I know I've never had that moment being married to Angie. I don't know what that's like, but I've seen it in her eyes as she looks at me, right? I mean, some of you know our story. We got married when I was 19 years old. And for now 19 years, I have felt like it was the best con I've ever pulled, right? I totally tricked her and she had no idea. And there are many moments along the way where I've seen it in her eyes of, oh no, I didn't know your maturity peaked at 19 and it was all downhill from here. Just all these. And in those moments when I see it, it's just like, yep, gotcha. Like you got nowhere to go. We're good. We're stuck. We're here, right? And so we get these. As a parent, you hold that little baby, right? Maybe you come up here and we dedicate your child. And you're repeating that prayer of Hannah, for this child I prayed, and the Lord has given me my request. Yes, yes, yes. And then some point at 3 a.m., it's no, no, no. Why, oh Lord? Did you ever trust me with a child? And then that little 3-month-old that won't sleep turns into a 3-year-old that won't listen, turns into a 13-year-old that you're looking for a return policy. Right? Turns into, and it's just along the way of like, yes, no, oh no, oh no, oh no, oh no. No offense to the 13-year-olds. We love you, right? You'll grow out of it. And so there's these yes, these no. Like you make the team. I remember in college, I went and played basketball, and walking into that first practice, it was this like, yes, this is what I dreamed about. This is what I worked for. I didn't think it was possible. I cannot believe God opened the door for me. And I walked into our very first practice, and there were trash cans in the middle of the basketball court. And some of you know why, and some of you are like, why? And I wondered why too. And then I asked one of my buddies, hey, what are those? He said, the first few practices, he makes us run till someone pukes. Like, no! Oh, no! Oh, no, but then they told me, don't worry, Ryan pukes at like the 3rd sprint every year. We're fine. It's like, oh, great. Thank God for Ryan. We love Ryan, right? There's that moment, yes, no. This is not what I signed up for. You get the job, right? You get the promotion. You're so excited. Here's the new influence. Here's the new opportunity to lead. But then you didn't realize you also get all the headaches and all the hassles and all the emails and all the phone calls You didn't realize that maybe the lowest level employee in your organization can ruin not just your day, but maybe your week, your month, or even your year, depending on their interactions with customers or clients. Yes, God has provided. Oh no, why has he brought me here? And in those oh no moments, we're going to see it with Israel, right? They're on the banks of the Red Sea, they're stuck, and they have this maybe we'll just go back. But what we want to learn from their story and what we want to apply in our story is every time God leads, every time he delivers, every time he sets us free, it's not to take us out into a new valley and abandon us, but to lead us all the way from where we are to where he wants us to be. So you're going to have that initial yes, you're going to have some oh no's, but if you'll stick it out, if you'll stay faithful, if you'll do the things he tells you to do in that space, you're going to experience another yes, right? And then it's going to start over, most likely, for a lot of us. And we don't want that because we just want the yes to be permanent, but that's not always our experience. So we're going to see this played out in Exodus 12 through 14. I know you've probably seen it in your own life, and we're going to learn some lessons this morning about what it means to trust that he is the God who always delivers. So we'll pick it up in Exodus chapter 12, verse 37. It says, the Israelites journeyed from Ramesses to Succoth. They were about 600,000 men on foot, besides women and children. Many other people went up with them, and also large droves of livestock, both flocks and herds. Now again, this is right on the after effects of them being set free from Israel. So they're set free. God sends them out into the wilderness surrounding Egypt. This is their yes moment. They've been set free. They have been launched out. They don't kind of sneak away hoping they're not seen. But if you go back and you read that story, it says that after the 10th plague, Pharaoh calls Moses and Aaron and says, all right, that's it. Y'all get out of here. Go now. And they march out in an orderly fashion, and they are blessed by the Egyptians as they go. The scriptures say they plundered the Egyptians. The Egyptians were giving them gold and silver and all kinds of other gifts because the Egyptians recognized the God of Israel has made our lives miserable until we set them free. So let's bless them on their way out, and then maybe he will bless us as they go. So they go out, and it's this wonderful yes moment. This is the moment of triumph. It's the moment that you and I enjoy. It's the moment that we long for, that we love to experience, the miracle, the provision, the deliverance, the new relationship, the new job. I love to hear your yes stories. And as we read through this, what we're reminded of is we have a responsibility to tell our yes stories. And we can be hesitant at times because we think, well, I don't want to brag. I don't want to look like I'm. It is never bragging or inappropriate to celebrate the goodness and grace of God in your life. Right? It's never inappropriate to tell others, hey, let me tell you about what God has done for me. It's never inappropriate to glorify God for his provision, his salvation, his miraculous intervention in your life. Especially when you look at so much of the news and so much of the conversation that we encounter, it is incredibly negative, right? It's this is wrong and that's wrong, and we argue about it and we fight about it. And anytime God's people have the opportunity to say, that might all be happening, but let me tell you what the Lord has done for me. These are good and wonderful experiences. They bring life to us as a body. They bring life to us as individuals. And in telling them, we're reminding ourselves what God has done, he is still doing. He still saves. He still delivers. He still leads us out. This morning, as I was working my way through my annual Bible reading plan, it brought me to Proverbs chapter 15. Proverbs 15, verse 30 says, light in a messenger's eyes brings joy to the heart, and good news gives health to the bones. We can be hesitant, but what the scriptures are telling us is it is good for you physically, spiritually, emotionally to tell the good things that God has done. I mean, you can tell in someone's demeanor, right? Proverbs tells us light in the messenger's eye brings joy to your heart. You can tell when somebody's coming to you with good news or bad news, right? When somebody comes to me like, hey, so I need to tell you about some stuff. You know, immediately it's like, I think you want to talk to Pastor Rennie. That's who you want to talk to her. She's really good at the kind of conversations, you know. I'm more of like the, hey, all right, let's go. Listen to what God did. I want to have those. That's what Proverbs is telling us. Hey, you can see the light in the messenger's eyes. When you think about the goodness of God, when you think about his deliverance, when you think about how he's led you out, when you think about where you were versus where you are, it should bring light to your eyes. And it says, as you share that good news, it brings health to the bones of those who are listening. Your good news has a good effect on other people. So tell your good news. Now, that doesn't mean there's not a space to be open and honest and lament and all of that kind of stuff. But what we're looking at here is when God leads us out, we're going to celebrate it. We're going to talk about it. But we also want to remember when God leads us out, we still need him to keep leading us. There's a temptation in those yes moments to think, okay, God has led me into my victory. Now I got it from here. Thanks, God, I will take it. Thanks, God, I will walk with it. Thanks, God, I can handle it from this point on. But as you keep reading through the story of the Israelites coming out of Egypt, we see not only did they need God to continue to lead them, but in some cases, he was leading them in ways that they never even knew about. So Exodus 13, verse 17, it says, when Pharaoh let the people go, God did not lead them on the road through the Philistine country, though that was shorter. For God said if they faced war, they might change their minds and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the desert road toward the Red Sea. Now, God knew that the Israelites were still relatively new in their experience with him. He knew that they were still going to be quick to fold under pressure. And so as they march out of Egypt, he takes not on the most direct route, but a little more, hey, we're going to take the scenic route. And the reason they take the scenic route is so they don't face a battle immediately as they walk out of Egypt. It's not that God is scared of the Philistines, but it's that he's caring for his people and preparing them for one final demonstration of God's power. But this little portion of Exodus 13 should force you and I to reflect this morning on how many hard spaces has God delivered us from without our knowledge. Have you ever, it's really kind of an impossible question because we don't actually know. You know, I don't know, but I know from the scriptures he does. We see this again and again and again of God's people. Sometimes they're not even aware of the schemes that are coming against them, and yet God delivers them. This is what we just prayed this in the Lord's Prayer. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Right? Sometimes he's leading you away from temptations you don't even know are there. Sometimes he's delivering you from experiences of evil that you had no idea were coming your way. And so for the Israelites, he says, hey, we're going to take this route along the Red Sea because I don't want you to have to face this battle over here and lose heart and turn away from me. It's just a wonderful reminder. I mean, even this week, I spent some time. I'd encourage you to do the same thing. I'm just saying, Lord, I don't know where or when or how, but thank you. Thank you for all the times, all the places. Thank you for the relationships that you never even let me encounter. Thank you for the opportunities to sin that you led me away from. Thank you for the temptations that I didn't even have to resist because you didn't let them get anywhere close to me. Lord, thank you that you saved, you delivered, you led, you guided in all of these amazing ways. You see, when God leads us out, he keeps leading us out. He doesn't set us free to set us off on our own. But we are set free from slavery in Egypt and set free for a life completely devoted and led by God. Our freedom is never to be completely autonomous individuals, but it's to take our place in his kingdom as his people, which means we're following his path, which means he is always leading and guiding. Now, those yes moments, they are wonderful, but they can also set us up at times for some unrealistic expectations. Especially if we haven't walked with Jesus for very long or through very much, there can be this thought of like, the last hard thing God led me through is the last hard thing I'll ever have to experience. And we want that to be true, right? That's fine, that's normal, I do too. You want to think like, okay, that last difficult moment, God saved, delivered, he healed, and I will never have to deal with it again. I'll never have to apologize for anything I say or do again, because God has saved me and delivered me finally. I will never have to deal with another difficult relationship. I'll never have to have another health challenge. I will never have to walk through another season of financial need. I'll never have any more uncertainty. I'll never have any more grief, any more doubt, any of this. I'll just be over and done with it. And yet what we know as we read through the scriptures, as we read through the Exodus stories, we hear the echoes of Exodus in the scriptures and in our lives, is that those yes are often followed by oh no's. But in the oh no, God is still there and God is still working. So we keep reading the Israelite story in Exodus chapter 14. It says, then the Lord said to Moses, tell the Israelites to turn back and encamp near Pi Hahiroth, between Migdal and the sea. They do encamp by the sea directly opposite Baal Zephon. Pharaoh will think the Israelites are wandering around the land in confusion, hemmed in by the desert. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. But I will gain glory for myself through Pharaoh and all his army, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. So the Israelites did this. Now, when God leads us out, he's going to continue to lead us, to guide us, to direct us in ways that might not always make the most sense to us. For the Israelites, he directs them out and basically tells them, okay, not only are you going to take the long route, but now you're going to it's going to appear that you're just wandering around in circles, that you're lost and you don't know where to go. But again, it's God's plan not only to deliver Israel, but to once and for all sever the ties of slavery with Egypt. He doesn't just want to set them free for a season or a generation, but he wants to free them from Egyptian slavery for all of eternity. And so Pharaoh sees this action, and it works exactly as God has intended. In verse 9, it says, the Egyptians, all Pharaoh's horses and chariots, horsemen and troops, pursued the Israelites and overtook them as they camped by the sea near Pi-hahiroth, opposite Baal-zephon. Now at this point, the Israelites are unarmed, they are untrained, they're an easy target for Pharaoh. And so when they see the Egyptians approaching, they do not think, now is the day of salvation. Today the Lord is going to finally and perfectly deal with Pharaoh. That guy is never going to hassle us again. They don't do any of that at all. Their response in their oh no moment is to literally just say, oh no. What do we do? Why did you bring us here? Listen to their response in verse 10. As Pharaoh approached, the Israelites looked up, and there were the Egyptians marching after them. They were terrified and cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to the desert to die? What have you done to us by bringing us out of Egypt? Didn't we say to you in Egypt, leave us alone, let us serve the Egyptians? It would have been better for us to serve the Egyptians than to die in the desert. So they have their oh no moment, right? You've been here. Like you had the wedding ceremony. It was awesome. It was beautiful. The flowers were right. The little girl walked down the aisle like she was supposed to. Like everything worked. Your dad cried at just the right moment. It was all beautiful. And then 6 months, 6 years, at some point down the road, it's like, what? Why did we think this was a good idea? I like wedding you. I don't like married you. All right? You're like, I thought the rudeness would be solved out of you. All right? Somebody told me the other day that men get married convinced that their wives will never change, and women get married convinced that their husbands must change. And then we just kind of ram heads over and over and over again. But every marriage has its oh no moments. Every job has its oh no moments. Every moment of raising children has its oh no moments. Every time you get a scholarship, join a team, get any kind of promotion in any way, that yes is almost always followed by some form of oh no. What have I got myself into? And in that space, we join with the Israelites, and we got to think, what do I do when the new good thing becomes the new difficult thing? What do I do when God's gift of grace and mercy and provision and salvation becomes a space where now I need God's grace and mercy and provision and salvation? The Israelites, in their fear, decide they just want to go back. Hey, let's just go back. Moses, we told you. We told you we didn't want to do this. We told you we just wanted to be slaves. I mean, we can hear the ridiculousness, but we should be gracious with the Israelites, and we should be gracious with ourselves, because in those oh no moments, we rarely react appropriately the first time we experience it. The Israelites are basically just kind of at their wits' end. Their hearts melt in fear. Fear makes us forget. They forget who God is. They forget what God has done. They forget that it's God who's directed them here. They forget that it's God that told them to take this route. They forget that it's God who told them to set up camp. They forget that it's God who said, I'm going to harden Pharaoh's heart. They forget that it's God who said, I'm going to deliver you from this. And they decide in their fear they've got to take some control back of the situation, because God can't be trusted. So they start telling Moses, we told you we shouldn't have come. What's wrong with you? I can't believe. I mean, it's that kind of selective memory. They celebrated with Moses when they were walking out of Egypt. But now suddenly this is all Moses' idea. What's wrong with you? Why would you do this to us? We should have just stayed. We should have just died. And I love Moses' response in Exodus chapter 14, verse 13. It says, Moses answered the people, do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Now, for years when I read this passage, I read the kind, soft, encouraging words of Moses to a people struck by fear. And I heard that in the kindest, most compassionate, fatherly tone you can imagine of, hey, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. Stand firm. Watch what the Lord is going to do for us. You don't need to move a muscle. Just be still. And then a couple years ago, I was reading through a commentary on Exodus 14 written by Dr. Peter Enns. He's a renowned Exodus scholar, ancient Hebrew scholar, and his explanation of Exodus 14, verse 14, especially that last line, the Lord will fight for you, but especially that last line, you need only be still, kind of changed my whole way of understanding it, changed my whole way of understanding and experiencing my own oh no moments in life. Okay, so just remember, renowned Exodus scholar, renowned Hebrew scholar, understands ancient Hebrew better than you and I understand modern English, okay? Brilliant, brilliant man. And listen to what he says about Exodus 14, verse 14. Moses is not saying, there, don't worry. God will take care of you. You'll see, be calm. Rather, this is a terse, impatient command on Moses' part. In Hebrew, the last part of the verse is a mere two Hebrew words, which are best translated as, you be quiet, or better, shut up. This is not a word of comfort, but an angry denouncement of Israel's paper-thin faith. Now, I don't know about you, but if you be still means shut up, it changes the whole way we read this story. Moses is no longer the kind, compassionate, loving father saying, hey, shh. Right? Just think of the way you've heard that term, be still. So Angie and I have got kids. When our kids were toddlers, they were like normal toddlers, but maybe on meth, right? And they were just all over the place and into everything and doing all kinds of stuff. And so with their grandmas, that's terrible, I know, they weren't really, but you know what I mean. With their grandmas and grandpas, they just have, like grandparents have a higher level of patience and tolerance for their grandchildren that honestly you all never displayed with your own children. And it's kind of offensive to watch, right? Any parents in the room that are like, I mean, how many times have I said to my own dad, you would have spanked me for that? He's like, yeah, but it's funny now. It's like, well, okay. But I remember at times our kids would just be absolutely nuts, losing their mind, and my mom, my dad, Angie's mom, my dad would kind of, hey, shh, be still, be still. Now, be still was their very nice way of saying, hey, be quiet, stop, settle. And now, as a dad, there were times that I also used the words be still, but they were not soaked in the same kind of love and affection from a grandparent. Right? It was in public. It was at church sometimes. It was in, like, we used to have preschoolers in worship at Christian Chapel. All the time, be still. And my be still was basically, I'm not in a place where it's culturally appropriate for me to tell you to shut up. So be still. Be still. And this is what Moses is telling the Israelites. In fact, I love Eugene Peterson's paraphrase of Exodus 14:14 in the Message. He says, God will fight the battle for you, and you keep your mouth shut. So what are we learning here? We're learning God leads, so shut up. Which again, I mean, when I read this, like I've always admired Moses. And my love for him just kind of went through the roof, right? I was like, man, Moses sounds like my dad. Moses sounds like my mom. Moses sounds like my grandma, my grandpa, my aunts, my uncles, my brothers, my sisters, my wife, my children, like me. The spirit of Moses lives strongly in the Dow family, apparently. Generation after generation, our response to whining, to fussing, to all these things is, hey, shut up! Stop it! Knock it off! That's enough. So Israel on the banks of the Red Sea, what this means, if this is actually Moses' response, then it means that the cry of Israel is not the cry of a people who do not know God and are afraid he has abandoned them. It's a cry of a people who have just witnessed the 10 plagues, God's miraculous intervention on their behalf over and over and over again. And now on the banks of the sea with Pharaoh's army closing in, they throw a petulant little childish temper tantrum saying effectively, God, how dare you bring us to a place where we have to rely on you again. And when I read it from that perspective, what I really identify with, even more than Moses, is the people of Israel. How many times have I been in that situation? How many times have you been in that situation where either figuratively or maybe sometimes quite literally, you are on the ground crying out, God, this isn't fair. How dare you? Why would you allow this to happen? Lord, I am surrounded by my enemies. Why would you bring me into this place again? Why would you bring me into this place where I have to completely depend on you? I thought we were past this. I thought we were over this. I thought I was done with that. And in those childish little temper tantrums, that voice of God still speaks clearly to us today in a language that we can all understand. Shut up. Just stop. Just be quiet. The yes moments, you were ready to praise him. In the no moments, we're ready to abandon him. In the yes moments, we acknowledge our complete reliance on him. In the no moments, we're ready to wrestle control back for ourselves. And so Moses comes and reminds the people of Israel, hey, you're not going to have to do anything except shut your mouths. And so again, now Moses is not just being harsh, but there's a very real application of what he's saying. Now, if you come into, let's say you email me this week and you're like, hey, Chris, I need to talk to you about some stuff that's going on in my life. I'm not going to lead with this. Okay, we might get there eventually, but I'm not going to lead with it. You're not going to sit down and tell me your problems and I'm going to say, hey, you know what? I got it. Exodus 14:14. Shut up. Stop talking about it. Go. It's not, Moses' command is not, hey, ignore your situation. It's not deny your reality. It's shut your mouth and remember who God is and what God has done. Because in those moments of whining, complaining, of rehearsing our miseries, what are we doing? We're letting our fear fuel our problems. And they're growing bigger and bigger and bigger. And as they grow bigger, our view of God is growing smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. But if you'll reach that moment where you'll just shut up. When you shut up, you can read the scriptures. When you shut up, you can hear the voice of the Spirit. When you shut up, you can be encouraged by the good news of others. When you shut up, you remember that the Exodus story is my story, that what he did there, he's still doing here. That God didn't lead me this far just to abandon me, but he's still going to lead me through it. So when we're reminded of, hey, your job here is just be quiet. It's not to resign to your situation, but it's to listen and say, okay, God, you brought me here. What are you doing? How are you working? And what do you require of me? The command here from Moses is to remind the people not just of who they are, but of who God is. And as he silences them, he tells them, the Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. All right, so the people of Israel, they have this picture of we're surrounded by our enemies. And I thought Blake and our band, they did such a great job, even in their song choice today, of presenting these themes of Exodus, of salvation, of deliverance over and over and over again. Because the Israelites look up and they just see, we're surrounded. We have no way out. But what Moses is trying to remind them of is, yeah, you may be surrounded. You may be between an army and a sea, between a rock and a hard place. But God always draws a bigger circle around your situation. He always has a bigger plan of salvation, always a bigger plan of provision, always a bigger plan of deliverance. And no matter how many enemies you may see, you can be sure and certain that God is above, beneath, and around all of them. None of them have caught him by surprise. None of them have come and are able to overpower him. Exodus is a story of the battle of the gods, and God always wins. And so he leads Israel into this experience of, hey, you're going to have to trust me now. Even when the new good thing has become the new difficult thing, your job is to remember, I'm still in charge, so you just be quiet. And then in Exodus 14, verse 21, it says that Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. And all that night, the Lord drove the sea back with a strong east wind and turned it into dry land. The waters were divided, and the Israelites went through the sea on dry ground, with a wall of water on their right and on their left. The Exodus story reminds us that God saves big time. Right? The Israelites don't wade, float, swim, or trudge their way across the sea. It says God splits the sea. There's a wall of water on their right, there's a wall of water on their left, and he not only separates the water, but he sucks all the moisture out of the ground. We've been to Oklahoma lakes, right? We don't have, like, Arkansas has the pretty stone bottom lakes that we love. We've got some that have a little bit more muck, for lack of a better word, at the bottom. And sometimes you step in those and you wonder, am I ever getting my foot back? Like, am I going to die here? Not in quicksand, just in Oklahoma clay and mud and who knows what else. But that's not what happens to the Israelites. They're not kind of laboriously trudging through this recently parted sea but still soggy floor. It says God separates the water, and he also removes all the moisture. They march right through on dry land, to the point that Pharaoh and his army, and especially Pharaoh and his chariot officers, think it's a good idea to pursue Israel through there. Now you've got to understand, Pharaoh's chariots, they are part of what makes him a superpower at that point in time. But they also only work on the really hard, compact ground of the desert. They're these big wooden wheels, they're wrapped in metal, and just the slightest bit of rain will cause them to get stuck. And so they look and they see the nation of Israel go across, and they decide, hey, we're gonna cross with them. We can make it through. Look how hard and compact that land is. We're going to do it. So God, he is saving not Israel by the skin of their teeth, not by just a little bit, but in an abundance of mercy and power, in this incredible display. And his purpose is not just to get Israel across, but it is to once and for all sever the ties with Egypt. And so Israel, they're sitting on one side of the sea with their slave masters in pursuit. And shortly after, they're standing on the other side of the sea, and their slave masters have been completely eliminated. Now again, this is one of the stories where you can think, well, God seems unnecessarily harsh. Why does he have to, make the sea come back over Pharaoh's army and his horses and all that kind of stuff? And again, it's just a reminder to us of the Lord was relentlessly dedicated to setting his people free. And Pharaoh was relentlessly dedicated to keeping them enslaved. And so God works to the point that it's required to achieve his salvation for his people. And this was what was necessary. And so the Israelites go from one day standing on the side of the sea, feeling like we're surrounded by our enemies, to the next day saying, hey, we're completely free and clear. The water has crashed over them. Now, when we read the story of the Red Sea, it's tempting to read it just as a story of, hey, look what God did, and don't worry, when you're facing a hard time, he's still with you too. But really what we're being told is God keeps delivering over and over and over again. So no matter where you are in that yes, no, yes cycle, he just keeps doing it over and over and over again. You're never going to reach the point, right? It's not like you have a deliverance punch card. And once you hit 20, God's like, hey, sorry. You got to give some attention to some other people here, right? Again and again and again, for as long as he leads, he delivers. For as long as he calls us out, he continues to provide for us. And so the Exodus story, it is an encouragement to you. You might be facing some tough moments today, and you need to be reminded. God sees where you are, and he has a plan to get you out of there. But the Exodus story, even more than that, foreshadows the arrival of Christ. And it reminds us all that at one point we are slaves standing between a sea and an army, an enemy dedicated to destroying us. And we're powerless to get across to the power and the presence, the place of God, the promised land he's calling us into. And so he sends Jesus to us, and he sends Jesus to part the sea so that we can walk right through and with it. And again, this new relationship, it's not one where we're going to trudge, where we're going to wade, where we're going to try to struggle and strain to make it to the other side. But he's going to split the sea, and that's going to be bone dry ground that you walk through with him. Through the power, the presence, the life, death, and resurrection of Jesus, that separation between us and God has been completely and totally destroyed, and we've been welcomed into his family. And now as we cross that with him, our enemies may still pursue. That sin may still try to creep back and entangle. Those old addictions might try to come up. But God's waves of mercy, grace, and provision still wash over all of those things. Your addictions are just as stuck in the mud and powerless to you as Pharaoh's chariots were to him. Your sin is just as dead and gone away with as Pharaoh's army was to him. The Exodus story foreshadows the arrival of Jesus, and through Christ we're now reminded not only has God split a sea for Israel to walk through, he split a sea for me to be in relationship with God, and he continues to save, deliver, to heal in every situation where I need him to today. All I need, he has provided. And so we're being reminded of, the Exodus story is a small encouragement to us when we're facing different trials and struggles, but it also points us to a much greater truth and a much greater reality. That Jesus is the all-sufficient one. And if he has called you out, if he has called you his sons and his daughters, he has not brought you this far to abandon you. Right? Those triumphs, they were his triumphs. Those successes were his successes. Those struggles, he was with you in every one of them, and he delivered you to this point. And you might feel like you're on the banks of a sea. You don't know where to go or what to do. And in your fear, you're tempted to go back. And today, we just want to hear the voice of Scripture speaking to us that says, hey, just be still. Stop it. Close your mouth. Open your heart. Open your ears. Read the Scriptures. Hear the stories. Remember who Jesus is and what Jesus has done. He has not brought you this far to abandon you, but to lead you through. And so as you keep reading through Exodus, you come to Exodus chapter 15. And in Exodus chapter 15, Moses writes this song that describes God's actions against the Israelites, or against the Egyptians on behalf of the Israelites. It's a song that is intended to be sung by the people of that day and the people of all the days to come. Now, you and I, we might not be as musically inclined or gifted or have that ability. I know for me, I've never written a song about any portion of my life. Probably not going to at any point, but some of you have, and that's wonderful. But Moses writes this song in Exodus chapter 15 that is intended to be a reminder to the Israelites of, hey, never forget that wherever we are in that yes, no, yes cycle, God is always there and God is always working. Never forget that wherever we are is where God has led us, and wherever we want to be is really not the main point. The point is, where does he want us to be? Where does he want to lead us? Where does he want to take us? What's his plan for us? We might feel surrounded, but he's always drawing that bigger circle around us. So in Exodus 15, Moses concludes by reminding us again of the main character of Exodus. He says in verse 13, in your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. You will bring them in and plant them on the mountain of your inheritance, the place, Lord, you made for your dwelling, the sanctuary, Lord, your hands established. Now, I don't know where you are. I don't know if you're walking with Jesus. I don't know if you've never begun that relationship. I don't know if maybe you are, but you feel stuck, you feel abandoned, you feel alone. I want to encourage you with Exodus chapter 15. It's just such a great reminder to us. We saw it last week. We're going to see it almost every week. The main character in Exodus is not Moses, Israel, the Egyptians, or Pharaoh. It's God. Exodus is a story of God's provision. Exodus is a story of God's plan. Exodus is a story of God's people who are special and privileged because they've been called out by him. And even here, Moses reminds us, in your unfailing love, you will lead the people you have redeemed. In your strength, you will guide them to your holy dwelling. We have confidence because we're not the main character in our own story. My life is his story. My life is his movement. My life is his deliverance. My life is his purpose. My life is his plan. And so anytime I find myself on the banks of the sea saying, I don't know where to go or what to do, I remember I'm not the author. He is. And if he redeemed me, he has a plan for me. And if he called me out, he's going to lead me through. So I don't know what you're facing today, but I want to encourage you. Say yes to Jesus. Surrender your life to him. Take your place as one of his redeemed, one of his called out ones. And then trust that he's leading, he's guiding, he's providing, he's protecting, he's preserving you in every single situation. And no matter how great the enemies feel around you, no matter how certain your destruction seems, may you remember this morning that God always draws a bigger circle of deliverance. He always has a path through. Will you stand with me so I can pray for you? The band's going to come back and lead us in a final song as well. Will you bow your heads and close your eyes? Jesus, I want to pray first of all for those who do not have a relationship with you. They might know who you are, but they don't know you as their Lord and their God. And so, Lord, I pray in these moments that you would help them to confess their sins, to surrender their identity to you, and to trust the purposes and the plans that you have for them. And Lord, we ask this morning that you would give us the privilege of celebrating with men and women as they take your place as your sons and daughters, as they receive your invitation to be welcomed into your family. And Lord, I pray for those who find themselves today identifying with Israel, stuck between an enemy and an obstacle, between a rock and a hard place, uncertain of how they got there or where they're to go. In these spaces, Lord, we ask that as we still our hearts, our minds, and our mouths, that you would come and remind us of your promises to save, to lead, and to provide. May we hear the strong voice of your Spirit today assuring us that you have not led us here to abandon us, but to demonstrate your power once again. So, Lord, in whatever situation that might be, if it's relationships, if it's work, if it's school, if it's health, if it's finances, Lord, I pray today that the words you spoke to the Israelites would be the words we hear. The enemies you see, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only be still. So, Lord, we ask for you to go to battle on our behalf in our marriages, in our hearts, and our souls. We ask you to go to battle against our addictions, against our sin. Will you go to battle against our doubt, against our depression, against our insecurities and our fears? Lord, will you go to battle for us at school and at work? In every place where we have an oh no experience this morning, we are trusting in your grace, your goodness, and your power. And so, Lord, help us to silence our fears and to hear your promises and to follow the path you're opening up for us. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. If you'd like someone to join with you in some personal prayers, maybe to say yes to Jesus, maybe with some situations you're facing, if you'll head out the back doors and to your left, our prayer team will be waiting to meet you in the prayer room. The rest of us, we're going to sing this final song this morning as a reminder that our security is found in our identity.